I'm popping on here for a quick chat to answer a question, and that is, what is sourdough and why should I care? Like, it's bread meant to feed your family. Why should I care? Like, what's the difference between sourdough and normal bread? Normal bread is made with yeast that is a commercial yeast. It is grown in a lab and it's dehydrated into those little pellets, and you use that yeast. Sourdough bread is wild yeast, basically. There's wild yeasts in the air everywhere. And the flour and water is simply a vessel that holds the wild yeast. And the wild yeasts make that starter rise and fall as you feed it. And you're feeding that yeast the flour and water when you feed your starter. So the wild yeasts are not as predictable. It used to be all bread was made with wild yeasts, but they're not as predictable. And the timelines can be really long. The timelines can vary depending on the temperature and the climate. And this was really hard for commercial bakers to regularly put out bread. And they found it was quicker and more reliable for them to use this commercial yeast. The thing about wild yeast, though, is that those wild yeasts break down. So wheat is a seed. I'm going to get you a handful of wheat to show you. So wheat, I just got wheat all over the floor. So wheat is a seed. And the seed, this is soft white wheat. Tiny little thing, right? It's hard to even show you. So, wheat is a seed. Let's see if I can show you a handful of it better. So wheat is a seed, right? And seeds have a natural, they're made with a coating on the outside, and that coating contains phytic acid. And this makes it so that when a deer walks through the field, this is like, think back before cultivation of plants. Think back to just like when plants grew wild and all that jazz. So when an animal would eat these seeds, they would go right through them, so then those seeds could still actually grow into a plant. That coating protects it so they still can just go through you and become a plant. So when you grind up those seeds, they're called wheat berries, that phytic acid and that coating is still there, it's just ground up. So it inhibits your body from digesting all it really could get from the bread, from the baking. And I'm by no means a sourdough purist. I make things that aren't sourdough in my kitchen. I just really enjoy the nerdy process of sourdough. So the sourdough yeasts, the wild yeasts, break down that phytic acid so that the bread, the wheat, and if you're putting like pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds and sesame seeds and that sort of thing in your bread, it also is broken down. The phytic acid gets broken down by the wild yeast and makes it all more digestible to you. So what does this mean? What does the bread mean, more digestible? It means when you eat a piece of bread, you don't have that like gut bomb in your stomach. It means it stays with you longer. A piece of sourdough bread with butter or cheese or something like that, peanut butter, jam, is gonna stay with you for so long. It also means that because those sourdough yeasts have started to break down, it's pre-digested to a certain extent so that when you start eating it, your system can just so quickly assimilate it into energy and usable food. Your body doesn't have to work so dang hard to get something out of it. So here's a cut open loaf of sourdough. Sourdough is quite often known by the fact that it has more holes in it, but that's actually just recipe style. there's sourdough that doesn't have any holes in it. There's ones that has massive holes in it. It's all about the water content, the hydration of the loaf. But other than that, looks like an artisan loaf of bread. This bread is flour, water, salt, and sourdough starter. And sourdough starter is just flour and water. So these cheap, humble ingredients make this delicious bread that is not gonna, in this current time of year for us, where sourdough bread would go bad in just a few days, this bread that has no preservatives at all will last a whole week. It won't go bad. It would take forever for it to go moldy because sourdough is a natural preservative to a certain extent. So even though it would be really chewy to eat, you toast it and it toasts up beautifully and it's delicious. So this bread will last us, well, it's gonna get eaten real quick. But you can leave a loaf on the counter and just slowly work away at it and it'll be delicious. Sourdough is really versatile. You can make challah bread and pita bread and bagels and buns and loaves and cookies and brownies and cakes. I haven't gone a whole lot into the sweet side of things, but goodness guys, you can make like anything with sourdough. It's pretty amazing. So one of my big beefs with sourdough is that ferments and sourdough, which is a ferment, have become hipster. They are cool now. They are mainstream. And this means people overcomplicate them. They've become elitist. These are the foods that fed our forefathers. They are not elitist. They are not hipster. They are real food. So yes, using a scale will get you more accuracy. But some of the methods I see for making bread, like yes, it makes good bread, but guys, it doesn't have to be that complicated. If you look on my blog, all the recipes you'll see for sourdough, I'll link below, are simple. You mix up your ingredients, and instead of using yeast, you're using sourdough starter. You mix them up, you knead them up, you let it sit. The difference is it's going to sit a lot longer. It's going to sit more like 12 hours instead of an hour or two. And then you're going to shape it, and then it's going to sit for a few hours before you bake it. You don't need special pans. You don't need special tools. It's not meant to be elitist. And it really gets me that it's become this elitist thing that it doesn't need to be. So this was a longer ramble than I intended. And you could probably hear Peppa Pig in the background. But I needed to have this ramble and just kind of explain to you guys what sourdough is and why you would want to use it.